Good afternoon. Welcome to our gooder days on the Great Loop. My name is Alan, and this is my beautiful, awesome wife, Yolanda. And I promise you we'll get the meter on one of these videos. I just get too caught up on these projects, and I need to get her on board. But she doesn't come on the boat a lot of the times because I'm just doing projects. So speaking of projects, this is another project video. And this is going to be about electronics and why we upgraded electronics on this 2012 Meridian 441. So number one, this boat came with Raymarine equipment. The radar, the multifunction displays, the autopilot, the depth finder, all Raymarine. And Raymarine's a good brand. I just prefer Garmin. Now I wasn't going to spend the money on the Garmin, but the problem was during the survey we found out that the radar wasn't working. And so that starts one thing. I got to replace the radar. Then I want the bigger functional display. I wasn't really happy with the older Raymarines. And so if I'm going to replace the radar and I'm going to replace the multifunction display, which are the two most expensive things on this item, on this boat, on electronics, I really wanted to upgrade the autopilot also, because the other autopilot, all it did was just did course direction. So you set it for 230 degrees. And it just goes in a straight line. And I really wanted the more modern autopilot that would actually plot a course so that it would actually follow the bends of the river or get me back home with making a few corrections. Now that doesn't mean you go downstairs and have a beer, but it does allow you to stay with it longer without having to constantly adjust, 1 and 5 degrees going up and down the rivers. So let's talk about what was on here. So here's some pictures of the old Raymarines, the ES120Ws, I believe, and there was two of them up here. One on the port, one on the starboard. And the one on the port was the main one that had the data card, and the starboard one read that same data card. And that data card was very outdated, at least 10 years old. Now I could have bought new data cards for probably $400 or $500 online, but like I said, I really wanted the new display. And so do I want one or two? Now I thought having two was a nice redundancy, more things, but these things are $6,000 a piece. So I said one of them is plenty. So I decided to go ahead and place one 8616 Garmin on the left side, on the port side here. And then what I did was I created a little panel, blank panel here, that I mounted my iPad in. Because for redundancies and charts, I've got my phone, I've got my iPad, and I've got the chart plotter. So I've got three different things that are all independent. If any one of these three things were to go out, I have the other one that I can run for a chart plotter. So again, these are all running off of either satellite through my Starlink, or they're running off of cell phone. And on the Great Loop, you get a lot of cell phone coverage. So it will work if you don't even have Starlink. But we do have Starlink on the front of the boat, so that makes it fantastic. So again, the Raymarine, this was a dedicated depth finder, and I decided to replace this with a GNX20 multifunction display, where it doesn't do a lot of different things at one time like the multifunction display here, but it does one thing where I can put depth on here, I can put speed, I can put course over ground, so I can cycle through several different things doing a single black and white display. So I really wanted that just to show my constant depth. Now, of course, you're going to have depth here on the multifunction display, and also GPS speed and GPS heading, or course over ground. So all those things can be split up and shown on the multifunction display. I just like to see it in big bold letters up here, so I like that. The next thing was this had an Raymarine autopilot that, like I mentioned before, just went in a single direction. It didn't do course planning or course following, what you could do on a route. So now I can plan a route using Active Captain or the Garmin here, and then the autopilot being tied into the network will follow that route. So we did that. Also the radio, I wanted a radio that plugged into the network also, and so we swapped out the old Raymarine radio for a Garmin 315. So I like this radio because it has a speaker in the microphone here, so when you pull this off, it will actually, you can put it up to your ear and hear. For those of us that are deaf, that's very handy. When things are loud, we can hold it up to the ear and hear it, so I like that. On top of that, it also has another speaker, which is over here, that's in this panel, that has a separate volume, so I can really turn it up. So now I have great volume where I can really crank it up, because there's nothing worse than having to ask a lockmaster or a marina, could you repeat that please, could you repeat that? And after about the third time they get a little PO'd at you. So can't help it. CRS, ADD, and bad hearing just is really tough on a boat when you're on a radio that doesn't have much volume and it's very scratchy. So that solved that problem, lots of volume there. So the next thing we also did was we added AIS. Now this boat didn't have AIS, so we added AIS to it, and I'll show you that when we open up this dash. And so that was something we added that was new. And this is also the AIS 800 Garmin, which is a transmitter and receiver, so we do transmit our speed. I also have added NEBO to this. So NEBO is under the dash, and we'll show you that there in a minute. So those are some of the things that we added to the boat. We actually replaced all the Raymarine. Now the one thing we did keep is the SmartCraft vessel view, and that is tied right into the QSB 5.9 Cummins 480 horsepower engines. So this gives me all the information on the temperature and the gallons per hour, and so this is a great device here, and it works well. So not going to change that out, because that basically is tied into the engines. So that's one thing about having electronic engines, is we get all that information right up here, so we know what all the vital statistics are. So with that said, let's go ahead and show you under the hood of what we've done here. So let me see if I can lift this up with all the stuff on it. And this is what we've got under here. Let me bring the camera over this way a little bit more. So underneath here, we really cleaned this up by, this is where the VHF radio was at before. We took that out and we put in the Garmin AIS 800, and that's what's here. Then what was over here was what Raymarine has for a network called CTalk. And so we took that device, which was about the same size of that, and we replaced that with the VHF radio, the 315. Now I need to get some smaller cables. They do this long cable for the speaker, so that you can actually put the speaker somewhere else, down below and someplace else, because this is like a 30-foot cable, but it doesn't impact the use of it. So some of the other stuff that's underneath here, this is the device that it's called C-Fire, that if it detects a fire, it shuts down the engines, so don't want to mess with that. Then we have our main electrical block here that we've tied things into. Now we've cleaned up a lot of stuff. We pulled out a lot of wires here and cleaned this up, because we don't have as many devices hooked into it as we did before. Now over here, what we have is, this is a yacht controller, and this is just one of the sweetest things I've come to really love on this boat. It allows me to dock the boat by myself. So what this is a remote control, and that remote control, it's not a joystick, it has 4 buttons, and it's for the bow thruster, the stern thruster, and then the port and starboard engines, where I can walk around the boat and manage the boat by docking it myself. And with my wife having a hurt shoulder and not being able to help that much when we're locking or just pulling out of the dock, it really does wonders. So I have no problems pulling this 47-foot boat out of this slip and going out by myself, locking and coming back here because of that yacht controller. Very easy to do. So that's some of the electronics that are underneath. And one of the things we did was, when we took the CTalk out, is we replaced it with the network. And I'm not going to pull that out right now, but it's got the what they call the NEMA 2000 network that Garmin uses, and it's all down in here. And it's just a matter of connectors and wires that gives you a baseline. I also wanted to point out, this is where I put up the NEBO link and just hooked it in. All it takes is a positive and a negative wire hooked into power, and I just put this under the dash so that it turns on and logs all my trips through NEBO. So that's a great device, allows me to log my trips without thinking about it. Let's go ahead and put this down now. That's all there is to that. We also put a USB card reader in there. So for a Garmin, if you want to update your electronics, instead of having to get behind this panel, I put this little Garmin SD slot reader. So that way I don't have to open this up and get kind of awkwardly to the back of this thing to put in an SD card. It just brings it out to the front to make it easier to do. So that mounted that right above the speaker, so that works out pretty well. Now the next thing we did is we ran the cables all the way back over here to the roof. And so what I've got back here is we had to pull this refrigerator out, and we ran the cables along here, up through here, and they come out right here for the radar. And so I've got one more wire here that I'm going to pull, which is the Starlink, because I'm going to remount the Starlink up. And this is where this stuff goes up into the radar tower, up and through here. So that was some work. We had to pull two cables in there, one for the GPS that we added. We added a Garmin GPS, and then we added the radar. So those two cables had to come up here, plus a power wire. So there's three wires, and then the fourth one is going to be this wire here for my Starlink. So let's go up on the roof and show you what we did with the radar. So this is the new radar system, and let's go show you how that works. This is the radar tower, and what used to be here was we had the array that was down here and mounted. It was that big array that goes around, and that was one of the problems we found in the survey, was it didn't spin up and I couldn't get it to work. And so I had to decide whether am I going to spend more money to fix that or just go ahead and get a new Garmin. So that's what we did. We got the new Garmin GNX20 I think it's called. And so anyways, works great. But the problem is, just like underneath this awning here, you'll see if this is up, my anchor light would have hit the roof. Plus that makes us 20 feet tall. And so at 20 feet we can't get under the Chicago Bridge up there. So with this down, we can now get down to 18 feet. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to go ahead and set the camera down. And I would be a lot nicer if it was easy to do, but let me show you what has to be done to make this thing come up. So when it comes up, I keep this little rope up here because this is how I lower it and bring it back down, because I don't want it slamming back down. So I just leave that little rope on there to pull it up. But now with this anchor light, we're 20 feet tall. And so it's not as sturdy as I'd like it, but I had this custom made for only $500. And buying a whole new mount that folds and is very commercialized from Seaview would have been $3,000. So this works fine. Now my plans is I've got my Starlink cable here, so I'm going to mount the Starlink dish right here. So that's a project still to be done. But it works really good out on the bow, so may not get done this week. So that's the radar tower. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to lower it. And that's all there is to it. Just got to be real careful so you don't slam it down. What I'd like to have seen is a full plate on the bottom and the top, and then make the plate, the hinge on the back, wider, and then that way it wouldn't be so wobbly. And that's what I don't like, is this thing is pretty wobbly on that one bolt and hinge. So if they would have put a flat plate on the top and bottom and a wider hinge, then it would have been a little more sturdy raising it up and down. But it works for $500, not a bad deal. So one other thing I was going to show you was we did add a new Garmin GPS up here. So that was one of the cables that we had to run. So that gives us the GPS positioning. So we had to swap out the Ray Marine. So that's it on the roof from the top of the boat from Gooder Days and Aqua Yachts. Let's get back downstairs. Well, let me show you what we've done in the basement to hook up some of the electronics. So one of the things we did was we hooked up the autopilot down here. And so you'll see right back here, we've got the electronics right here for the Garmin. And that's where the autopilot kicks in. And that actually is the first device. And then there's another device in the back that hooks up to do the sensing of the rudders. So I didn't have to buy a rudder sensor. We actually used a device, a wiring harness that will adapt the Raymarine sensor to Garmin, which saved us $250. So again, you've got this. We ran wires all the way back to the back of in the engine room where the sensors are at, and that's where we hooked up the autopilot. And that really was all there is to it, besides what was up on the dash, running the wires, hooking up the autopilot here. We removed the Raymarine autopilot that was here and reran some new cables because we're using the NEMA 2000 network instead of the C-Talk. So we had to pull the C-Talk cables out and rerun those. Not a big deal. So that's it for the electronics. And if you saw our water maker video, you'll see the water maker's over here behind these bins. And to get to it, we just got to pull these bins out in the refrigerator and we can start making water. So with that said, we'll see you on the water. Have a gooder day.